The Hitchhiker of Niles Canyon Road. I grew up in Fremont, California, about 15 minutes from Niles Canyon Road. Everyone I knew had heard stories about it. Some claimed there was a woman in white who appeared after midnight. Others said she was a teenage girl who flagged down drivers and vanished before they reached the bridge. I always assumed it was just exaggerated local folklore. Every town has a haunted road, and Niles Canyon was ours. I never took it seriously. That changed on October 14th. I had just finished a brutal double shift at the warehouse where I worked. It was the kind of shift that leaves your muscles burning and your thoughts slow and foggy. By the time I clocked out, it was 12:47 a.m. The parking lot was mostly empty, lit by flickering overhead lights that buzzed faintly in the cold air. I sat in my car for a minute before starting the engine, just staring at the steering wheel, letting the exhaustion settle into my bones. When I opened my GPS, it automatically selected the fastest route home, Niles Canyon Road. 14 minutes. The freeway alternative would take over half an hour. I hesitated, not because I believed the stories, but because the canyon feels different at night. The darkness there isn't like normal darkness. It feels thick. Heavy. Still, I was tired and just wanted to be home. I chose the canyon. The transition was immediate. Streetlights disappeared. Buildings faded away. The road narrowed and the canyon walls rose steeply on both sides, blocking out any distant glow from the city. Trees leaned inward, their branches arching over the asphalt like ribs. My headlights carved a narrow tunnel through the darkness, but everything beyond that beam felt unreachable. About 10 minutes in, my radio cut out. It didn't fade gradually. The music stopped mid-lyric and turned into sharp static. I tapped the screen, switched stations, adjusted the volume. Nothing but white noise. Eventually I turned it off, letting silence fill the car. That was when I saw her. She stood near the guardrail on the right side of the road. A white dress hung loosely around her legs. She was barefoot. Her long black hair covered her face entirely, hanging forward like a curtain. She wasn't moving. At first, I assumed she'd been in an accident or needed help. No one should be standing alone in that canyon at that hour. I slowed down and rolled down my passenger window halfway. Cold air rushed inside, carrying the faint smell of damp earth. "Hey," I called out. "Are you okay?" She didn't respond. She didn't move. She didn't even shift her weight. Then, slowly, unnaturally slowly, she raised her arm and pointed behind my car. The motion looked wrong, like a mannequin being adjusted by invisible hands. I instinctively checked my rearview mirror. The road behind me was empty. No headlights. No movement. Nothing. When I looked back at her, she was gone. Not walking away. Not stepping into the trees. Gone completely. The stretch of guardrail where she had stood was empty. A chill ran through me. I rolled up the window, locked the doors, and pressed the gas pedal. My pulse was starting to race, but I kept telling myself there had to be a logical explanation. That was when my headlights flickered. Just once. But in that brief dip of light, I saw movement in the rearview mirror. Someone was sitting in my back seat. Her head tilted slightly to the side. Hair still covering her face. I slammed on the brake so hard the tires screeched against the asphalt. The car fishtailed, nearly clipping the canyon wall. My heart pounded violently in my chest as I twisted around to look. The back seat was empty. But the fabric wasn't dry. Dark wet patches spread across the upholstery, soaking into the material as if someone had just climbed in dripping water. I reached back with trembling fingers and touched it. Cold. Damp. And it smelled like stagnant river water. Then I heard it. Breathing. Slow and wet, right behind me. I didn't turn around again. I couldn't. I pressed the gas and sped forward, hands shaking so badly I could barely keep the wheel straight. Every time I glanced at the rearview mirror, the back seat seemed darker than it should have been, like the light refused to reach it. When I finally reached the freeway lights, the radio suddenly turned back on at full volume, blasting music into the car. I pulled over and sat there shaking for nearly 20 minutes before driving home. The next morning, I told my coworker Luis what happened. I expected him to laugh. Instead, he went quiet. After a moment, he said, "You saw her too?" He showed me a local online forum filled with similar stories. Same description. Same pointing gesture. Same appearance in the back seat. One post mentioned a girl who had died decades ago when her car went off the canyon road into the river below. Her body was never recovered. What unsettled me most wasn't that people saw her. It was what she was doing. She was always pointing behind the driver, as if warning them about something following them. 2 weeks later, against my better judgment, I drove back through the canyon just after midnight. I told myself I needed closure. Needed to prove to myself that I had imagined it. When I reached the same stretch of road, I slowed down. This time, she wasn't there. But something else was. Farther ahead in the road, illuminated faintly by my headlights, was a shape low to the ground. It looked like someone crawling. I eased forward slowly. The figure stopped moving. Then it lifted its head. The face staring back at me was mine. Same jacket. Same features. But the eyes were completely black. It smiled. Too wide. The shape rose to its feet, bones cracking in ways that didn't sound human. I blinked, and it was gone. The road was empty again. My rearview mirror caught movement. She was back in the back seat, closer this time. Her hair parted just enough for me to see one clouded, waterlogged eye staring directly at me. Her arm was raised again, pointing behind me. I forced myself to look into the mirror. And in the reflection, I saw something sitting in the passenger seat beside me. Tall. Its neck bent sideways to fit inside the car. Its face inches from mine. When I turned my head, the seat was empty. The headlights shut off completely, plunging the car into total darkness. The engine was still running, but I couldn't see anything. In that silence, I heard breathing all around the vehicle. Hands slid across the windows. The car shifted slightly, as if weight was being distributed around it. Then I heard her voice. Not aloud. Inside my head. He followed you. The headlights snapped back on. The road was empty again. But my windshield was covered in wet handprints. I never drove through Niles Canyon again. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone in my car, I feel the passenger seat dip slightly. I see something in the reflection of my phone screen that disappears when I turn around. Last week, I found water pooled in my back seat again. And this time, there was a second wet patch. In the passenger seat. The desert rental near Barstow. I moved into the house because it was cheap, and at the time, cheap was all I cared about. I had just relocated to California for a construction contract that was supposed to last 8 months. Most of the work was scattered around the Barstow area, and rent anywhere within driving distance was absurdly expensive. I spent 2 weeks checking listings before I found the property, a small, one-story desert house listed for nearly half the average price. That should have been my first warning sign. The landlord never met me in person. He said he lived out of state and handled everything remotely. The keys were in a lockbox bolted beside the front door. He told me the previous tenant had moved out suddenly due to family issues, and that the place had been vacant for a while. At the time, I didn't question it. Cheap rent in California felt like winning the lottery. The house sat miles off the main highway, connected by a long dirt road that cut through flat desert emptiness. There were no neighboring houses in sight. No street lights. No power lines nearby except the single line feeding the property itself. The silence out there felt massive, like the land swallowed sound instead of carrying it. The first night passed without incident. I unpacked a few essentials, ordered takeout from town, and went to bed early. The quiet was unsettling, but I assumed I would get used to it. The second night was when things began. I woke sometime after midnight to the sound of footsteps on the roof. At first, I thought it was wine dragging debris across the shingles. But the steps were too deliberate. Slow. Heavy. Like boots grinding sand against wood. They moved from one end of the roof to the other, paused directly above my bedroom, then continued again. I grabbed a flashlight and went outside to check. The desert was freezing at night, the cold biting through my shirt instantly. I circled the house, shining the light upward. The roof was empty. No animals. No branches. No explanation. I stood there for a full minute, listening. Nothing. When I went back inside, I immediately noticed something wrong. The hallway closet door was open. I was certain I had left it closed. I hadn't even unpacked that closet yet. I stepped closer and shined the flashlight inside. Dozens of Polaroid photographs were scattered across the floor. They were old, yellowed around the edges, curled from heat exposure. I crouched down and started picking them up. Every photo showed the same house. The kitchen. The living room. The hallway. The bedroom I was sleeping in. All taken from inside the house. But what made my hands start shaking was what appeared in the reflections. Mirrors. Windows. Even the dark glass of the turned-off television. In every reflective surface, there was a tall blurred figure standing behind the photographer. Its outline was human but stretched, distorted. Too tall for the ceiling. Too thin to be natural. Watching. I didn't sleep well that night. Or the next. By the third night, exhaustion finally knocked me out, and that was when the worst experience happened. I woke at exactly 3:12 a.m., unable to move. At first, I thought it was sleep paralysis. I had experienced it once before years ago. My body felt heavy, pinned to the mattress. My breathing was shallow. My eyes were open, staring at the dark ceiling. Then I heard breathing beside me. Slow. Wet. Close enough that I could feel it vibrating through the pillow. My eyes shifted sideways with extreme effort. The pillow next to mine had an indentation, as if someone invisible was lying there facing me. Breathing. The mattress dipped slightly near my legs, like weight-adjusting position. Terror flooded my body, but I couldn't move. Couldn't scream. The breathing grew deeper, almost curious. Then it stopped. The indentation slowly lifted, as if whatever had been there was sitting up. I heard footsteps cross the bedroom floor. But the door never opened. The footsteps just faded. I lay there until sunrise, too afraid to close my eyes again. The following day, I searched the entire house. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Squatters. Animals. Something logical. That was when I found the trapdoor. It was hidden beneath a thin layer of carpet in the hallway closet, the same closet where I'd found the photos. The wooden hatch had no handle, just a shallow groove where fingers could grip. It took effort to pull open. A wave of stale, cold air rushed out. Below was a narrow crawlspace just tall enough to crouch in. I shined my flashlight down. The dirt floor was covered in more Polaroids. Hundreds of them. Photos of the house over decades. And then I found newer ones. Photos of me unloading my car. Photos of me sleeping. Photos taken from inside my bedroom at night. I moved out the same day. I didn't pack everything. I didn't even care about my deposit. I just grabbed essentials and left before sunset. On the way out of town, I stopped at a gas station and asked the clerk if he knew anything about the property. He went quiet immediately. After a moment, he told me the last owner had disappeared inside that house about 10 years earlier. Search teams combed the area for weeks. No body was ever found. Just his camera. It had been discovered on the bedroom floor, pointed directly at the bed. I tried to put the experience behind me after that. Tried to convince myself it was stress, isolation, imagination. Then 3 weeks later, while scrolling through my phone, I found a photo I had never taken. It showed me sleeping in that house, taken from the corner of the bedroom. And standing behind me was the same tall blurred figure from the Polaroids, watching me sleep. The clearing off Highway 199. My brother always warned me about camping alone in Northern California forests, especially the remote areas along Highway 199. I didn't listen. I had been working a long week, craving solitude and quiet. I had a small SUV, a sleeping bag, and a backpack with some supplies. The plan was simple: drive through the redwoods, find a clearing, and sleep under the stars for one night before continuing north the next day. I didn't realize how wrong that decision would be. The drive was beautiful at first. The sun dipped low, painting the massive trunks with gold and red hues. Birds chirped as I passed smaller streams, and occasional deer darted across the road. I followed Highway 199 through dense woods, knowing I wouldn't find another car for miles. As the sun began to disappear behind the tallest trees, I spotted a small dirt clearing on the side of the road. No signage. No other cars. Just a flat open space surrounded by towering redwoods. I told myself it was perfect. I parked, laid out my sleeping bag in the back of my SUV, and prepared to rest. Night came faster than expected. Darkness fell like a blanket over the forest. The usual sounds of night filled the clearing: crickets, owls, and the soft rustling of leaves. But beneath those normal sounds, there was something else. Something subtle. Every few minutes, I heard what sounded like branches snapping, not from the wind, but deliberate, measured, walking like cracks. I told myself it was wildlife. Raccoons. Deer. Anything but human. Still, my skin prickled. Around midnight, I woke to 3 loud knocks against the passenger side window. Slow. Deliberate. My heart stopped. I froze, staring into the darkness outside. The moonlight revealed a figure standing inches from the glass. At first, I thought it was a man, tall, thin, with a wide, almost exaggerated smile. His eyes reflected the faint light in an unnatural way, catching and glinting like glass. I swallowed hard. "Who's there?" I called, my voice shaking. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked straight into the trees. Not around them. Not behind them. Into them. As if the forest itself swallowed him whole. I tried to convince myself it was just someone playing a prank, but my gut told me otherwise. I stayed in the car, paralyzed by fear and indecision. An hour later, I heard movement again, footsteps circling my SUV. Multiple sets this time. Slow, deliberate, surrounding the car. I could hear whispers, but they weren't human voices. They repeated the same words over and over: "Stay inside." My blood ran cold. I locked every door and tried to stay quiet, but the whispers continued. At 4 a.m., something slammed into the rear of my car so violently that the vehicle rocked. I jumped in shock and hit the ignition, flooring the gas pedal without thinking. The vehicle roared, tires spinning on loose dirt, but as I accelerated, I noticed shapes between the trees. 6 figures, standing motionless, staring at me. Their smiles were impossibly wide, faces unnervingly calm. I could feel their gaze on me even as I sped away. The shadows of the trees stretched long and twisted, and every flicker of my headlights revealed a figure I couldn't escape. When I finally reached the highway and stopped at the first gas station, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely fill the tank. I told the clerk about what had happened. His face went pale. He leaned in and whispered that the clearing I had camped in wasn't just a campsite. Decades ago, it had been a logging site. Several workers had disappeared without a trace. Search teams couldn't find them. Some of the locals say the forest itself doesn't want to give them up. I left without a word, paid for gas, and didn't look back. That night, back at a motel, I checked my phone. No signal out in the forest had meant no notifications. But there was something I hadn't noticed before: photos automatically saved in my camera roll. Images I hadn't taken. One showed the clearing where I had slept, taken from above, as if someone had been standing in the trees. In the faint moonlight captured in the photo, I could see the figures from the forest, 6 of them, motionless, faces turned toward the camera, smiling. I never returned to Highway 199. I don't camp anymore. But sometimes, in quiet moments, I swear I can hear footsteps circling my car in the dark, and whispers carrying over the wind, saying the same thing over and over: stay inside. I tell myself it's my imagination, but I know the truth. Some places in the forest are patient. They don't need roads. They don't need lures. All they need is for you to enter. And if you do, you may never leave the same way. Even now, driving near that area, I avoid any clearing. My hands grip the wheel tighter. My eyes stay glued to the road. And I don't sleep in my car. Not anymore. That was tonight's Whisper from the Shadows. Subscribe to Nightbound Whispers. And remember, the night is never truly silent.